go, lesson 2.3 on energy utilization, storage, and distribution. Energy efficiency, efficient energy, something like that. Important consideration for designers in today's society. Energy conservation, efficient energy use. You as the designer need to be thinking about these things because your users want them. They're willing to pay a little bit more for them, but not necessarily a whole lot more. Designer's goal: reduce the amount of energy required to provide products or services using newer technologies and creative implementation of systems to reduce usage. You like my little picture of an energy efficient design? The little leaves coming out of the building. Conservation versus efficiency. Examples: energy conservation would be driving less. You're using less energy. Energy efficient would be driving the same amount, but using a car that uses less energy, so a more efficient car. Ideally, we would like a little bit of each. Distribution of energy. We have what are called national and international grid systems. In the United States, we have what are typically known as the Western Interconnect, the Eastern Interconnect, and then we have Texas, because they tend to just do their own thing. Combined heat and power, also known as CHP, a system that simultaneously generates heat and electricity. So in this system, instead of just producing electricity by burning some kind of a fossil fuel and pushing electrons, we are now taking all that heat, that excess heat that is released from these power plants, and using that heat to heat our communities, heat buildings. There's a video on CHP.
When you generate electricity, you also make heat. Because large power stations are located far away from energy users, there is nobody nearby to benefit from this heat, and so it is simply lost into the atmosphere through cooling towers. Enough energy is wasted to heat every home in the UK. As energy bills continue to rise, why are we wasting so much? It doesn't have to be this way. Consumers can generate their own power locally, capture the waste heat and take control of their energy bills. Combined heat and power reduces cost in carbon emissions in homes, businesses and the public sector. The two combined heat and power systems at Centre Park's latest site in Woburn Forest save over £200,000 and 900 tonnes of carbon a year. Combined heat and power can be found in 40 London Fire Brigade stations. At Battersea Fire Station, it reduces 13 tonnes of carbon and saves the fire service £2,500 in energy costs a year. Last year, Rotherham Hospital's combined heat and power plant saved the hospital £273,000 and 1,300 tonnes of carbon. And more than 66 care homes are now benefiting from combined heat and power, with each site saving approximately £15,000 a year and 6 tonnes of CO2. You can use combined heat and power in your home too. By using LPG, even the most rural of homes can benefit from low-carbon, efficient and affordable heat and electricity. There are already more than 2,000 sites using combined heat and power across the UK, providing real financial and environmental benefits to their users, and the potential is even greater. Combined heat and power could be implemented in 3 times that many sites, lowering carbon emissions and reducing energy bills for thousands more consumers, all while playing a key part in a less wasteful, low-carbon, local energy system.
All right. We also have what's called individual energy generation. I put a little picture of What in the UK they call a torch, what we call a flashlight. It's got the little hand crank. As you spin it, you're generating some electricity. You're pushing electrons. Some of it's being stored long enough that your flashlight will stay on even when you're done cranking. Devices that create small amounts of energy to run low energy products. Quantification and mitigation of carbon emissions. Okay, carbon emissions, when we talk about global warming and climate change, we tie most of global warming and climate change back to CO2 emissions. And most of that comes from fossil fuel combustion for energy purposes. So when we're talking about carbon emissions and trying to quantify and control those, the way carbon credits would work is that different groups in industry, manufacturing, energy production would be allocated certain amounts of carbon credits that they were allowed to use. And we track that. And if they use more than they were supposed to, they would pay fines for it. If they use less than they were allocated, they could potentially sell some of those carbon credits. So you're creating a bit of a market for carbon release. And if you become more efficient, it'd be beneficial financially to you. Now, the guy on the $20 bill there is Al Gore, who was the vice president for the United States under Bill Clinton in the 90s. And Al Gore has been kind of the face of climate change and global warming in trying to slow down carbon emissions. So that's why he's on that picture. And then you got Nancy Pelosi behind him off to the left. Total energy. There's two levels of the total energy involved in a product. You can have what's called cradle to factory gate. So basically from the harvesting of the raw materials to the actual production of the product. And then when you ship it out, only through that point. So it's the amount of energy consumed through production. You also have cradle to grave. So that includes the amount of energy not only through production, but also the entire life of that product and into the disposal of that product. Batteries. Great for portable and electronic devices. They continue as the technologies get better and better. They become more and more efficient, and they become smaller and lighter. That's why we've seen drones become so popular, because they need to be light. And now batteries that didn't used to be possible are possible. Batteries, things to consider. Their relative cost, for the most part, they're pretty cheap. That's why we use them. They're efficient. They're reliable. The problem with batteries is they have quite an environmental impact. And for most batteries out there, when we use it, when we're done with it, we tend to just throw them away, or at least a lot of us do. So they have quite an impact on the environment. You can do what's called a life cycle analysis, and you can assess what kind of an impact that a product has on the environment. Different types of batteries that you might be familiar with. Hydrogen fuel cells are considered a battery because it's stored energy. Lithium batteries, nickel cadmium batteries, lead acid, and lithium, I guess it's potassium, LiPo. International-mindedness. Sometimes energy sources, for example, oil and electricity, cross national borders through cross-border networks, leading to issues of energy security. This would be true in this image here. Now, luckily, we have a really good relationship with Canada, and I think we kind of take care of each other. But a lot of the oil that gets harvested from Alaska gets sent down to the lower 48 states via pipeline. And a lot of those pipelines would have to go through Canada to get to us. So we kind of rely on those pipelines being safe and making sure that nothing happens to them so that we have a steady flow of energy. You can see how in other places in the world that might not work out as well, as the borders may not be quite as safe. Aim 1, here's our standard. As we develop new electronic products, electrical energy power sources remain an ever important issue. The ability to concentrate electrical energy into ever-decreasing volume and weight is the challenge for designers of electronic products. Okay? Batteries. And as we said, batteries keep getting better and better. Embodied energy. It's the total amount of energy required to produce a product. So here's an example of some on the bottom right, and these might be things that may be used to build a house, houses of different kinds. And you can see if your house is made out of straw and adobe, there's not a whole lot of embodied energy in there, which means you didn't have a huge impact on the environment with the amount of resources that went into your production. Versus if you have one made out of cement, plywood, and fiberglass, like most of our houses are, you have a lot more embodied energy in your house. Methods of distributing energy. The method with which energy is transported from one source to where it is used. This includes the use of national and international grid systems. Charging point networks for electric vehicles is the example given here. And you may have seen these. I know there are some Tesla charging stations around our communities in the state of Colorado.